The dust-laden wind carried a secret as Felicity Vance stepped off the train in White Oaks, New Mexico territory, clutching a letter that wasn't meant for her. The year was 1882, and the mining boomtown buzzed with the energy of silver strikes and broken dreams. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she surveyed the rugged landscape, nothing like the green hills of Pennsylvania she'd left behind. The weight of her deception pressed down on her shoulders with every step she took on this foreign soil. "Madam, you all right there?" A weathered station master approached, eyeing her expensive dress now stained with travel dust. "Yes, thank you," Felicity replied, adjusting her hat. "I'm looking for a man named Owen Garrison." The station master's eyebrows shot up. "Garrison's ranch, that's a fair piece from town." "Got someone meeting you?" Felicity swallowed hard. "I believe so." She didn't add that Owen Garrison was expecting Florence Vaughn, the mail-order bride he'd been corresponding with for 6 months, not Felicity, Florence's lady's companion who'd undertaken this desperate journey after Florence's tragic death from scarlet fever. The letters in her possession, passionate, thoughtful correspondences between Florence and Owen, had given Felicity a dangerous hope. With no family and no prospects after her employer's death, she had made an impossible choice. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention to a tall figure on horseback. The man dismounted with the easy grace of someone who'd spent his life in the saddle. His face was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see he was handsome, with a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes the color of a summer sky. "Miss Vaughn?" he asked, removing his hat and revealing a shock of sandy brown hair. Felicity's throat tightened. "Mr. Garrison." He nodded, studying her face with an intensity that made her cheeks flush. "Welcome to New Mexico territory. I hope your journey wasn't too difficult." It was. "Educational," she managed, trying to match the confident tone Florence would have used. Owen Garrison looked exactly as Florence had described him, tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The guilt surged anew as he took her carpetbag. "The wagon's just over there," he said, gesturing to a weathered but well-maintained vehicle. "Town's a bit lively today with the miners getting paid. Best we head straight to the ranch." The journey to the ranch passed in a blur of stunning vistas and awkward conversation. Felicity tried to recall everything Florence had written in her letters, terrified of making a mistake that would expose her deception. Owen seemed equally uncomfortable, a man of few words trying to make conversation with the woman he believed he would marry. "Your letters didn't mention how beautiful this land is," Felicity said, desperate to break the silence. Owen's expression softened. "It grows on you. Wasn't much to look at when I first arrived 7 years ago, but now I couldn't imagine being anywhere else." "How did you come to be in White Oaks?" "After the war, I drifted west like many. Tried my hand at mining, but the land called to me stronger. Started with 20 acres and a dream." He glanced at her. "Now I've got 300 acres, a decent herd, and a house that needs a woman's touch." The ranch came into view as they crested a hill, a sprawling single-story home with a wide porch, surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. It wasn't grand by Eastern standards, but it spoke of hard work and care. "It's lovely," she said, meaning it. "It's home," he replied simply. A young boy of about 12 ran out to meet them, followed by an older man with a pronounced limp. "This is Caleb," Owen said, nodding to the boy. "My foreman's son, and that's Hank, been with me since the beginning." "Madam," Hank said, touching his hat brim respectfully. Caleb stared openly at her. "You don't look like the picture." Felicity's heart stopped. "Picture?" Owen cleared his throat. "Don't mind him, you sent a tintype that didn't do you justice." The tintype. Of course Florence would have sent her photograph. Felicity fought to keep her composure as Owen led her inside. The house was unexpectedly welcoming, clean and well-furnished, with colorful woven blankets adding warmth to the sturdy furniture. A middle-aged Mexican woman bustled out from what must have been the kitchen. "Miss Vaughn, this is Maria. She helps around the house and makes sure we don't starve." Maria's dark eyes were shrewd as she assessed Felicity. "Welcome, miss. Dinner will be ready soon." That night, after a surprisingly delicious meal, Felicity found herself alone in the guest bedroom. Owen had been the perfect gentleman, explaining that they would be married by the circuit preacher who would arrive in 2 weeks' time. The thought filled her with equal parts anticipation and dread. Morning came with the sounds of a working ranch. Felicity dressed in her simplest gown and ventured out to find Owen already returned from early chores, drinking coffee on the porch. "Sleep well?" he asked, offering her a cup. "Yes, thank you." She accepted the coffee, their fingers brushing momentarily. For 3 days, Felicity settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She helped Maria in the kitchen, explored the property, and in the evenings, sat with Owen on the porch as he spoke about his dreams for the ranch. Each day, the weight of her lie grew heavier, especially as she found herself drawn to the quiet strength and decency of the man who believed she was someone else. On the 4th evening, as they watched the sunset paint the mountains in gold and purple, Owen turned to her. "You're different than I expected," he said carefully. Felicity's heart raced. "Is that disappointing?" "No." His eyes held hers. "Your letters were so bold, so sure. You seem more reserved," she offered, thoughtful maybe, "like you're watching and considering. I like it." He smiled and something inside her melted. "I'm glad you're here, Florence." The name hit her like a physical blow. That night's sleep eluded her as she paced the small guest room. How could she continue this deception? Yet how could she tell the truth now? The answer came the next morning in the form of a telegram delivered by a young ranch hand returning from town. Felicity was helping Maria hang laundry when Owen approached, his expression unreadable as he held out the yellow paper. "This came for you," he said. "From Pennsylvania." With trembling fingers, she took the telegram. It was from Florence's brother inquiring if she had arrived safely. The telegram was addressed to Felicity Vance, care of Owen Garrison. "I don't understand," Owen said, his voice carefully controlled. "Who is Felicity Vance?" The moment had come. She couldn't run from it any longer. "I am," she whispered, unable to meet his eyes. "I'm not the woman you ordered, Mr. Garrison." The silence that followed seemed endless. When she finally looked up, Owen's expression was a mix of confusion and betrayal. "Explain," he said simply. And so she did. Standing in the yard with the clean sheets flapping in the breeze, Felicity told him everything about being Florence's companion, about the scarlet fever that had taken her employer's life, about the desperate choice she'd made when faced with returning to a life of poverty and servitude. "She spoke of you with such affection," Felicity said, tears streaming down her face. "I read your letters. I know I shouldn't have, but they were so full of hope and dreams. When she died, I thought perhaps I could become her." Owen's voice was hard. "No, I never thought I could replace her. I had nowhere to go." Owen turned away, his shoulders rigid with anger or hurt, she couldn't tell which. "You lied to me for days. You let me believe." "I know," she interrupted. "And I will never forgive myself for that. I'll leave first thing tomorrow. I have enough money for a ticket back east." He faced her again, his eyes stormy. "And what will you do back east, Miss Vance? Return to being a lady's companion? If I'm fortunate enough to find such a position again, more likely I'll seek work in a factory." Owen ran a hand through his hair, his internal struggle evident. "I need time to think. Please stay in the house for now." With that, he strode toward the stables, leaving Felicity standing alone with the damning telegram clutched in her hand. Maria, who had witnessed the entire exchange, approached slowly. "Men need time to let their pride heal, Nina," she said gently. "Come help me with dinner. Work is good medicine for a troubled heart." That evening, Owen didn't return for dinner. Hank informed her that the boss had ridden to check on the herd at the north pasture and wouldn't be back until late. Felicity ate little, her appetite gone along with her hope. In her room, she began packing her meager belongings, tears flowing freely now that she was alone. A soft knock at her door startled her. "Come in," she called, hastily wiping her eyes. Owen entered, looking exhausted, His clothes were dusty from the trail, and there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "I spoke with Hank," he said without preamble. He said something that made sense. Felicity waited, afraid to hope. He said a woman who'd traveled 2,000 miles on nothing but a prayer and some borrowed letters must either be running from something terrible or has the kind of courage most men would envy. Owen took a step closer. "Which is it, Miss Vance?" "Perhaps a bit of both," she admitted. "After Florence died, her brother made improper advances. When I refused him, he threatened to have me arrested for theft, claiming I had stolen from his sister." Owen's jaw tightened. "Did you?" "No," she said firmly. "Florence gifted me several dresses and a small brooch before she died, but his word would have been taken over mine." "So you ran?" "Yes, and then I saw your letters, and they painted such a picture of honor and decency. I convinced myself that even if I couldn't be the bride you wanted, perhaps I could be of use here. It was foolish and wrong." Owen was quiet for a long moment. "I rode a lot of miles today thinking about what you did. At first I was angry, felt like a fool." Felicity lowered her eyes. "I understand. But then I started thinking about the woman who's been in my home these past days. How she pitched in without complaint. How she treated Caleb and Hank and Maria with respect. How she looked at this hard country not with disappointment but with wonder." He took another step toward her. "That woman may not be the one I ordered, but I'm starting to think she might be better than what I dreamed." Felicity's head snapped up, sure she had misheard. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like you to stay, Miss Vance. Not as my bride, we clearly need to know each other better first, but as my housekeeper if you're willing. Fair wages, your own room, and the chance to see if there might be something worth building between us." Hope bloomed in her chest, fragile but insistent. "You would give me that chance." "After what I did, we all deserve second chances," he said softly. "I got mine when I found this land, maybe this is yours." Felicity took a deep breath. "I would be honored to accept your offer, Mr. Garrison." "Owen," he corrected with the hint of a smile. "If we're starting fresh, it's Owen." "Felicity," she replied, extending her hand. His larger one enveloped hers, warm and calloused. "Welcome to the Garrison Ranch, Felicity Vance, for real this time." The weeks that followed established a new rhythm at the ranch. Felicity took over much of the household management, freeing Maria to focus on cooking. She learned to make soap from rendered fat, to preserve vegetables from the kitchen garden, and to manage the dairy from the ranch's 3 milk cows. Each new skill brought a sense of accomplishment and belonging she had never known in her life as a companion. Owen kept his distance initially, polite but cautious. But as May turned to June, the walls between them gradually lowered. They fell into the habit of evening conversations on the porch, where Felicity shared stories of her childhood in Philadelphia, and Owen spoke of his dreams for the ranch's future. "I want to bring Hereford cattle," he told her one evening. "They're hardier than the Longhorns, better suited for beef production." "That would require significant investment," Felicity observed, having learned enough about ranch economics to understand the challenge. "Yes, but the railroad's coming. When it does, those who can provide quality beef will prosper." She admired his forward thinking, so different from the stagnant traditions that had defined her life back east. "You're a visionary, Owen Garrison," he laughed softly. "Just a man with plans." Their hands rested inches apart on the porch rail. Neither moved to close the distance, but both were acutely aware of the possibility. In early July, a band of Comanchero's outlaws who preyed on isolated ranches struck a neighboring property. The community rallied, and Owen rode out with other ranchers to track the thieves. Felicity spent 3 anxious days praying for his safe return, realizing with startling clarity how essential he had become to her happiness. When the men returned, Owen among them, she ran to meet him, propriety forgotten in her relief. "You're safe," she breathed, stopping just short of embracing him, his eyes softened as he dismounted. "Had to come back, got too much waiting for me here." That night, as they sat closer than usual on the porch steps, Owen spoke of the future more directly than he had before. Been thinking about expanding the house, he said casually. Adding a proper parlor and maybe another bedroom or two. Felicity's pulse quickened. That sounds like a significant undertaking. Would be worth it, though, for a family. Their eyes met in the gathering twilight and neither looked away. The following Sunday, Owen suggested they attend services in White Oaks together. It would be Felicity's first proper visit to town since her arrival, and she dressed carefully in her best blue dress, refashioned from one of Florence's gowns. The small church was crowded with townspeople and ranchers from the surrounding area. As they took their seats, Felicity felt curious eyes upon them. Owen placed a protective hand at the small of her back, guiding her to a pew. After the service, he introduced her to neighbors and friends, referring to her simply as Miss Vance, who's helping at the ranch. If anyone remembered that a mail-order bride named Florence Vaughn was expected, they were too polite to mention it. As they prepared to leave, a well-dressed man approached them. "Garrison, didn't expect to see you in town today." "Dennison," Owen nodded, his manner cooling noticeably. "Miss Vance, this is Edgar Dennison. He owns the White Oaks Mercantile." "A pleasure, Miss Vance." Dennison's eyes lingered on her face longer than was proper. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure of seeing you in my establishment yet." "Miss Vance hasn't had need to visit town," Owen said before she could respond. "Well, I hope you'll stop by soon," Dennison continued, ignoring Owen's obvious desire to end the conversation. "I've just received some lovely fabrics from back east that might interest a lady of your refinement." "Thank you, Mr. Dennison," Felicity replied politely. "Perhaps another time." As they drove back to the ranch, Felicity noticed Owen's tense posture. "You don't care for Mr. Dennison," she observed. Owen's jaw tightened. "Dennison's the type who forgets to add water to the whiskey he sells the Apache, then complains about Indian troubles when they object. He's also been trying to buy out smaller ranchers when they hit hard times." "Has he approached you?" "Twice. Seems to think everyone has a price." Felicity considered this. "Everyone does have a price, Owen, just not always one that can be paid in dollars." He glanced at her with newfound respect. "That's a mighty astute observation, Miss Vance." "I've had considerable experience observing human nature," she replied with a small smile. "It was my primary form of entertainment as a companion." Their laughter dissolved the tension, and by the time they reached the ranch, the encounter with Dennison was forgotten. August brought scorching heat that tested everyone's patience. The creek that provided water for the ranch's garden and household use dwindled to a trickle. Owen and his hands worked from dawn to dusk, moving cattle to pastures with better access to water. Felicity took to rising before dawn to complete her washing and baking before the heat became unbearable. One such morning she was hanging laundry when she noticed smoke rising from the direction of the north pasture. Heart racing, she ran to the stable where Hank was mending tack. "Hank, fire in the north pasture." The old cowhand dropped his work immediately. "Ring the bell, I'll get the men." Felicity rushed to the heavy iron bell mounted near the bunkhouse and pulled the rope with all her strength. The clanging alarm brought the remaining ranch hands running as Hank shouted instructions. "Owen and the boys are up there," he told Felicity as the men grabbed shovels and burlap sacks. "Stay here with Maria. If the wind shifts, you may need to evacuate." For hours, Felicity and Maria watched the distant smoke, preparing food and water for the men when they returned. By mid-afternoon, the ranch yard filled with exhausted, soot-covered cowboys, Owen among them. "Got it contained," he reported, accepting the water Felicity offered. "Lost about 10 acres of grazing land, but no cattle, thank the Lord." "How did it start?" she asked, noticing the angry red burn on his forearm. "Lightning strike most likely." "This time of year, a single spark can," he broke off as she gently took his arm to examine the burn. "This needs tending," she said firmly. "Come inside." In the kitchen, she carefully cleaned the burn with cool water and applied a salve of aloe Maria kept for such purposes. Owen watched her work, wincing occasionally but making no complaint. You would have made a good doctor's wife, he observed. Felicity smiled without looking up. I prefer ranching to medicine, less blood, more sunshine. Even with fire and drought and Comancheros, even so. She finished bandaging his arm. There, try not to get it dirty. He caught her hand before she could move away. Thank you, Felicity, not just for this, for everything you've done here. The kitchen seemed suddenly smaller, the air charged between them. I should check on the men, she said softly, reluctantly withdrawing her hand. That evening, despite his exhaustion, Owen joined her on the porch. They sat in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge in the vast desert sky. I've been meaning to ask, Owen said eventually. What was she like, Florence? The question surprised Felicity. They rarely spoke of the deception that had brought her to New Mexico. She was beautiful, Felicity began carefully. Confident and charming, the kind of woman who entered a room and immediately became its center. Like you, then. Felicity laughed. No, not like me at all. I was always in the background, watching and waiting. Florence lived boldly. She wanted adventure and wasn't afraid to reach for it. Is that why she agreed to marry a stranger in the territories? Partly. Her family had lost much of their fortune in bad investments. Marriage to you offered financial security and the excitement of the frontier. Owen considered this. And what did you want, Felicity, before you came here? The question made her pause. No one had ever asked about her dreams before. I wanted. She searched for the right words. I wanted to matter, to someone, to something. As a companion, I was useful but ultimately replaceable. I wanted a place where I belonged. Owen's hand found hers in the darkness. You matter here, he said simply. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken promises. Then a coyote howled in the distance, breaking the spell. I should turn in, Felicity said reluctantly. Morning comes early. Owen stood with her. Felicity. He hesitated, then seemed to think better of whatever he had planned to say. Sleep well. As summer gave way to fall, the relationship between Felicity and Owen deepened beyond employer and employee. They worked side by side preparing the ranch for winter smoking meat, canning vegetables, repairing fences and outbuildings. In the evenings, Owen taught Felicity to play chess, while she read aloud from the dog-eared novels he kept carefully shelved in the parlor. The arrival of the circuit judge in early October brought with it an unexpected opportunity. The judge, a friend of Owen's from his early days in the territory, mentioned during dinner that the schoolteacher in White Oaks had taken ill and returned east. Town's looking for someone with education to take her place until spring, the judge explained. Thought of you right away, Miss Vance, from what Owens told me of your background. Felicity looked to Owen in surprise. You think I could teach? You're the most well-read person I know, he replied with quiet confidence. And you've been teaching Caleb his figures and letters. The boys improved more in 3 months with you than in 2 years with Mrs. Peterson. The prospect was both exciting and terrifying. I've never taught formally. It's 3 days a week in town, the judge added. Decent pay too. White Oaks values education, being a proper town now and not just a mining camp. You should consider it, Owen said. Maria and I managed before you came. We could adjust to having you here only part-time. Felicity heard what he didn't say, that this would give her independence, a life beyond the ranch and their complicated relationship. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. I would like to try, she decided, if you're sure you can spare me. We'll manage, Owen assured her, though something like regret flickered in his eyes. The teaching position proved to be a blessing in disguise. The 12 students ranging from 6 to 15 years challenged and delighted Felicity in equal measure. She discovered a natural talent for education and returned to the ranch each evening full of stories about her pupils' progress. The arrangement also gave her and Owen necessary space to consider their feelings without the constant proximity of ranch life. When they did see each other, their conversations had new depth and appreciation. One crisp November evening, Owen met her at the schoolhouse with the wagon. As they drove back to the ranch, he seemed preoccupied. Is everything all right? She asked. The cattle are fine, he assured her. Better than fine, actually. I got a letter today from that cattle broker in Kansas City. He's agreed to my price for the spring drive. Owen, that's wonderful news. It means I can start on those Herefords, he continued. Build the herd I've been planning for years. You deserve this success, she said warmly. No one works harder. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I've been thinking about what success really means, Felicity. 5 years ago, it was just about the cattle and the land. Now, she waited, heart pounding, as he searched for words. Now I'm thinking a man needs more than land and cattle to be truly successful. Before Felicity could respond, they crested a hill and the ranch came into view, windows glowing with welcoming light, smoke curling from the chimney. Home in a way no place had ever been for her. Oh, she exclaimed. What's all this? The ranch yard was transformed. Lanterns hung from tree branches and the porch had been swept clean and decorated with autumn flowers. Maria stood on the steps, beaming beside a table set for two. Owen pulled the wagon to a stop. I asked Maria to prepare something special tonight, to celebrate your first month of teaching. Stunned by the gesture, Felicity allowed him to help her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist. Maria had outdone herself with a feast of roast venison, fresh bread, and apple pie still warm from the oven. Wine had been poured into Owen's best glasses, a wedding gift from his parents that he'd never used. This is too much, Felicity protested as Owen held her chair. Not nearly enough, he replied, taking his seat across from her. You've brought something to this place that was missing, Felicity, not just as a housekeeper or a teacher, but as, he paused, seemingly gathering courage, as the woman you are. The candlelight illuminated his face, highlighting the earnest affection in his eyes. Felicity felt the last of her guards falling away. When I came here, I was running from the past and lying about who I was, she said softly. You gave me the chance to become someone true. Owen reached across the table, taking her hand. I've been thinking about why Florence's letters appealed to me so much. They were full of life and spirit, yes, but there was something else, a yearning for connection that matched my own. When you arrived, different from what I expected, but somehow exactly what I needed, I thought it was chance. Now I think perhaps it was providence. Owen. Felicity's voice wavered with emotion. I'm not asking anything of you tonight, he assured her, squeezing her hand gently. Just wanted you to know that whatever brought you here, lies, fate, or divine intervention, I'm grateful for it every day. They finished their meal in a companionable glow, talking easily of ranch business, her students, and plans for the winter ahead. As they lingered over apple pie and coffee, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, delicate white specks against the darkening sky. First snow, Owen observed. Earlier than usual, Felicity smiled. I've always loved the first snowfall. In Philadelphia, it transformed the city, made even the dirtiest streets beautiful for a time. Out here it can be dangerous, he cautioned, but beautiful too, especially from a warm home. Home. The word settled in her heart, comfortable and right. December arrived with a bitter cold snap that forced everyone indoors. The ranch hands huddled in the bunkhouse, and Owen spent long evenings with Felicity and Maria in the warm kitchen, mending tack and planning for spring. School had been suspended until after Christmas due to the weather, giving Felicity unexpected free time. She used it to prepare a special surprise for Owen, secretly sewing a new shirt of fine wool she'd purchased from Dennison's store on her last trip to town. The merchant had been overly attentive, asking pointed questions about her relationship with Owen, but Felicity had deflected them gracefully. 2 weeks before Christmas, the weather cleared enough for Owen to ride into town for supplies and mail. He returned with an unexpected guest, a young woman of perhaps 20, bundled against the cold but unmistakably fashionable. Felicity, Owen called as he helped the woman down from the wagon. This is Miss Rebecca Thornton from St. Louis. She's the niece of Judge Willis. Rebecca Thornton was everything Felicity was not: petite, golden-haired, and possessed of the kind of refined beauty that came from generations of good breeding. She extended a gloved hand with practiced grace. "Miss Vance, Uncle Willis has told me so much about you. I'm visiting for the holidays and simply had to meet the schoolteacher who's revolutionized education in White Oaks." Felicity returned the greeting, suddenly conscious of her practical work dress and wind-blown hair. "Welcome to Garrison Ranch, Miss Thornton. Please come inside where it's warm." Over dinner, it became clear that Rebecca was as intelligent as she was beautiful. She spoke knowledgeably about literature, politics, and even ranching, having grown up on her father's estate in Missouri. Owen seemed impressed by her, listening attentively to her stories and laughing at her witty observations. Felicity tried to ignore the twist of jealousy in her stomach. After all, she had no claim on Owen beyond their friendship and working arrangement. If he was drawn to someone like Rebecca, someone who didn't arrive on false pretenses, how could she fault him? The young woman was to stay overnight before Owen would drive her back to town the next day. As Felicity prepared the guest room, her old room, as she had moved to the smaller chamber off the kitchen months ago, Rebecca appeared in the doorway. "May I help?" she offered. "Thank you, but it's nearly done," Felicity replied, smoothing the quilt. Rebecca entered anyway, closing the door partially behind her. "I hope you don't mind my saying so, Miss Vance, but you're not what I expected from Uncle's description." Felicity stiffened. "Oh, he described you as a spinster schoolteacher," Rebecca said with a laugh. "But you're quite young and pretty, and Mr. Garrison clearly adores you." The observation caught Felicity off guard. "Mr. Garrison and I have a professional relationship, Miss Thornton. I manage his household and teach in town." Rebecca's smile was knowing. "If you say so. But I've seen how he looks at you when you're not watching. It's rather romantic, actually." Before Felicity could respond, Maria called for her assistance in the kitchen, ending the uncomfortable conversation. That night, Felicity lay awake, Rebecca's words echoing in her mind. Did Owen look at her in a special way? And if so, why had he not spoken of his feelings more directly? Their relationship had grown increasingly affectionate over the months, but he had never formally courted her or mentioned marriage. Perhaps, she thought with a pang, he still couldn't fully trust her after her initial deception. Or worse, perhaps he saw her only as a convenient arrangement, a competent housekeeper and occasional companion, but not a potential wife. The next morning, Owen drove Rebecca back to town as planned. When he returned late that afternoon, he found Felicity in the root cellar, inventorying their winter stores. "There you are," he said, ducking his tall frame through the low doorway. "I've been looking all over." "Just checking our supplies," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "The potatoes are holding well, but we should use the last of the carrots soon." Owen leaned against the earthen wall, studying her. "Is everything all right, Felicity? You seem distant." "I'm perfectly fine," she assured him, making a note in her ledger. "Miss Thornton is settled back in town." "Yes, at the hotel. She's quite taken with the authentic frontier experience, as she calls it." Felicity nodded, trying to ignore the jealousy that flared again. "She's a lovely young woman, very accomplished." "She is," Owen agreed. "Her father is one of the largest cattle brokers in St. Louis. She's here partly on his behalf, looking into investment opportunities." "I see. Felicity." Owen's voice softened as he took the ledger from her hands. "Look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. "Rebecca Thornton is a business connection, nothing more. I'm not interested in her, no matter how accomplished she might be." Relief flooded through Felicity, followed immediately by embarrassment at her transparency. "I didn't mean to imply you didn't have to." His lips quirked in a half-smile. "Your face shows everything you're thinking, at least to me." "A disadvantage in poker, I imagine," she said, attempting to lighten the moment, "but an advantage in other matters." He stepped closer, his expression growing serious. "I've been wanting to talk to you about something important, but the timing never seemed right." Felicity's heart began to race. "What is it?" Before Owen could continue, Hank's voice called from outside. "Boss, we got trouble at the north fence line." Owen closed his eyes briefly in frustration. "I have to go, But this conversation isn't over. Of course, Felicity agreed, trying to hide her disappointment. He squeezed her hand briefly before hurrying away, leaving her wondering what he had been about to say. The trouble turned out to be 3 of Dennison's men cutting the fence to allow their cattle onto Owen's winter pasture. A heated confrontation ensued, and though no shots were fired, Owen returned to the ranch with a split lip and a dangerous glint in his eye. "Dennison's pushing too far," he told Felicity as she cleaned his injury. "First trying to buy out Jenkins' place when the poor man's wife was barely in the ground, now this. What will you do? Ride into town tomorrow, speak with the sheriff?" "Not that Connolly will do much. He and Dennison are thick as thieves, but it needs to be reported officially." Felicity frowned. "Be careful, Owen. Men like Dennison don't respect boundaries." He caught her hand, pressing it to his cheek. "I will, and when I return, we'll finish our conversation." But circumstances continued to conspire against them. A blizzard blew in the next day, stranding Owen in town for 3 days. When he finally made it back to the ranch, he was exhausted and feverish, having ridden through dangerous conditions to return. Felicity and Maria nursed him through a severe chest cold that kept him bedridden through Christmas. Though disappointed by the delay in their important conversation, Felicity found joy in caring for him. The tenderness between them deepened as she read to him during his recovery, prepared his favorite foods, and simply sat with him during long winter afternoons. By New Year's Eve, Owen was well enough to join the small celebration in the ranch house kitchen. The hands had been given permission to ride into town for the festivities there, leaving just Owen, Felicity, Maria, Hank, and young Caleb to mark the occasion. At Maria's insistence, they observed the Mexican tradition of eating 12 grapes at midnight, making wishes for each month of the coming year. As the grandfather clock in the parlor began to strike 12, Felicity closed her eyes, wishing for courage to embrace whatever future awaited her, with or without Owen. When she opened her eyes, she found Owen watching her, his expression so tender it made her breath catch. "Happy New Year," he said softly. "Happy New Year," she echoed. Maria shooed Hank and Caleb toward their quarters soon after, claiming exhaustion but winking conspiratorially at Felicity as she left. Suddenly alone, Felicity and Owen sat before the kitchen fire, the only sound the crackling of burning pine. "I never gave you your Christmas gift," Owen said, breaking the comfortable silence. "You were ill," Felicity reminded him. "Besides, the new books you ordered for me were more than generous. That was just a small token." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small box wrapped in silver paper. "This is your real gift." With trembling fingers, Felicity unwrapped the package. Inside was a velvet jeweler's box, and within that, a delicate gold locket engraved with flowing vines and flowers. "Owen, it's beautiful," she breathed. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny painting, not a portrait as she had expected, but a miniature landscape of the ranch house with the mountains rising behind it. "I commissioned it when I was in Kansas City last fall," he explained. "The artist worked from my description and a rough sketch." "It's perfect," she whispered, tears threatening, I thought. He cleared his throat. "I thought you might want a reminder of home wherever life takes you." Felicity looked up sharply. "Are you sending me away?" "No." Owen took her hands in his. "God, no, the opposite, in fact." He took a deep breath. "Felicity, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light and purpose to this house, made it a real home." She waited, hardly daring to hope. "I had plans, you know," he continued. "Was going to court you proper dinners in town, rides in the countryside, all the things a respectable woman deserves. But every time I tried to start, something interfered. Like blizzards and fence cutters," Felicity offered with a small smile. "Exactly." Owen's thumbs traced circles on her palms. "Then I realized something while I was sick. Life out here is unpredictable, always will be. If we wait for the perfect moment, we might wait forever." He slid from his chair, kneeling before her. "I love you, Felicity Vance." "Not Florence, Not some ideal I imagined through letters, but you the real woman who came into my life through the strangest circumstances and made it immeasurably better." Tears spilled freely down Felicity's cheeks now. "Owen. I know it hasn't been long by conventional standards," he pressed on. "And I know your position at the school gives you independence you might not want to surrender, but I'm asking anyway." He took a small velvet pouch from his pocket and emptied a simple gold band into his palm. "Will you marry me? Make this ranch truly yours as it already is in my heart." Felicity's answer came with no hesitation. "Yes, yes, with all my heart." Owen slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her into his arms. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, but the second burned with the passion of months of restraint finally released. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I love you," Felicity said, the words she had held back for so long finally free. "I think I have since that first week, when you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve." Owen pressed his forehead to hers. "You deserved every chance and more. You're better than any dream I could have had, Felicity, better than anyone I could have imagined or ordered from across the country." They married 2 weeks later in the White Oaks Church, with the entire community in attendance. Even Edgar Dennison came, though his congratulations seemed forced. Rebecca Thornton surprised Felicity by becoming a genuine friend, gifting the couple with fine linens from St. Louis and promising to speak with her father about Owen's Hereford breeding program. Judge Willis performed the ceremony, beaming as he pronounced them husband and wife. "Never seen a better matched pair," he declared at the small reception afterward. "Even if you did arrive under unusual circumstances, Miss Vance or Mrs. Garrison now, I should say." Felicity continued teaching through the spring term, riding to town with Owen 3 days a week. In June, she reluctantly resigned her position when morning sickness confirmed what she had suspected their family would grow by one come winter. Parenthood suited them both. Benjamin Owen Garrison arrived during the first snowfall of December, 1883, a healthy boy with his mother's auburn hair and his father's blue eyes. Felicity discovered that the skills that made her an excellent teacher translated well to motherhood, while Owen's patient strength made him a natural father. The ranch prospered as Owen's vision for improved cattle breeding proved successful. By 1885, Garrison Ranch was known throughout the territory for its quality stock, and Owen had been elected to the Territorial Livestock Association Board. In the spring of 1886, as Felicity watched her husband teaching their toddler son to ride his first pony, she reflected on the desperate young woman who had stepped off the train in White Oaks 4 years earlier. That woman could never have imagined the life awaiting her, a life built on a falsehood, but sustained by deeper truths. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Owen asked, joining her on the porch after settling Ben for his nap. "About beginnings," she replied, leaning into him as his arm circled her waist, "and how the worst decisions can sometimes lead to the best outcomes." Owen pressed a kiss to her temple, thinking about Florence in a way. Felicity turned in his arms. "I received a letter yesterday from her brother. He's remarried and wanted to let me know he harbors no ill will for my hasty departure, as he put it." "Generous of him," Owen said dryly, "considering he drove you away with his unwanted advances." "Perhaps time has improved his character," Felicity suggested. "Or more likely, his new wife has a substantial dowry that eased his financial troubles." Owen laughed, the sound still one of her greatest joys. "Either way, I'm grateful. If he had been a better man, you might never have come west. And you would have married Florence Vaughn as planned." "Perhaps." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But I prefer to believe we would have found each other somehow. Some things are meant to be, regardless of the path." As the sun set over the New Mexico mountains, painting the landscape in gold and purple, Felicity silently thanked Florence, whose letters had brought her to this place, and Owen, whose heart had allowed her to stay. Most of all, she thanked whatever twist of fate or divine intervention had transformed a desperate deception into the truest thing she had ever known. "I love you, Owen Garrison," she said simply. His answer came as naturally as breathing. "And I love you, Felicity Garrison, always will." In the years that followed, their family grew to include twin daughters, Sarah and Louisa, born in 1887, and another son, James, who arrived in 1890. The ranch expanded as well, eventually encompassing over 1,000 acres of the most productive land in Lincoln County. When the Spanish influenza swept through New Mexico in 1918, Felicity and Owen, by then silver-haired but still strong, opened their home to orphan children from White Oaks. 3 of those children, 2 boys and a girl, became permanent additions to the Garrison family, a testament to the generosity of spirit that defined their household. Visitors to the ranch often remarked on the unusual love story at its center, how a mail-order bride who wasn't what she claimed turned out to be exactly what was needed. Felicity would smile at these comments, exchanging knowing glances with her husband. The deception that brought her to New Mexico had long since been forgiven, replaced by decades of honesty, partnership, and unwavering love. "I'm not the woman you ordered," she would sometimes whisper to Owen in private moments, echoing her confession from that long-ago afternoon. And he would always reply, just as he had come to believe with his whole heart, "You're better than my dreams."